Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Boruto chapter 67, full spoilers. Alright guys, this chapter right here was absolutely insane. The last chapter we thought it was the best chapter of the year, pretty much because the year just started, but also we thought that was probably going to remain the best chapter of the year. Turns out that that wasn't the case. Now I'm not necessarily going to say that this chapter kind of surpassed the last chapter, but it's really cool. But before I start babbling on, I'm going to talk about exactly what happened in the chapter. Now we're going to go from most important things to kind of least important things in my personal opinion. The biggest thing in this chapter was plot. Everything was furthered. There was huge plot, and I think that this right here, plot wise, is probably going to be one of the biggest chapters that we actually do see for a very long time. Boruto is officially free from Momoshiki Otsutsuki, and also Boruto is now 100% Otsutsuki. This right here is absolutely insane. No one really seen this turn of events, and pretty sure no one really predicted this either. A lot of people kind of had the idea that Momoshiki would actually revive Boruto, but not this way. Now let me break down exactly what happened. Momoshiki says that Boruto's karma seal was 82% decompressed. The final 18%, Momoshiki was forced to manually decompress that data. So because of that additional 18%, Boruto is now 100% Otsutsuki. But here's the thing, that final 18% wasn't decompressed using Momoshiki's own data from the karma seal. That data right there did actually come from Boruto. Just to break it down, Momoshiki explained it like this. Boruto had a portion of his heart and a portion of his lungs completely destroyed, and he lost a ton of blood. At this given moment, the karma seal isn't necessarily 100% complete, so Momoshiki can't necessarily add his own data just forcefully with the karma seal. Boruto's data is already inside of Boruto's body, so he essentially replicated his own body with his own data and then healed Boruto. Momoshiki says that this right here is the last time that he could actually use this thing on Boruto. I'm not completely sure of that. Momoshiki might just be lying, but I think he's probably telling the truth. But this right here essentially means that Boruto is now free from Momoshiki. Momoshiki can no longer revive himself because that final 18% of the karma seal was decompressed using Boruto's own data, not Momoshiki. So Boruto will never turn to 100% Momoshiki Otsutsuki. Boruto is 100% Otsutsuki, but not 100% Momoshiki Otsutsuki. There's another thing that we do have to talk about in regards to Momoshiki Otsutsuki, but I definitely do want to talk about Kawaki first. Kawaki fought in this chapter. He fought against Code. This battle right here, in my personal opinion, went exactly how a lot of people thought it would probably go. Now, one thing that I definitely do want to point out, a lot of people thought that Naruto would actually fight. I thought that Kawaki made more sense, even though I did want Naruto to actually fight, but it turns out that Naruto did not fight in this chapter. Naruto was just completely grieving over Boruto the whole chapter. So the fight that we did see, as I said, Kawaki versus Code, this was not a competition. Kawaki absolutely obliterated Code. It looked like the Super Bowl when Odell Beckham Jr. was actually healthy. This didn't look like a competition at all. Kawaki, as I said, was absolutely destroying Code using all of his abilities, the Idol Jutsu, the Karma Seal, of course, just physical taijutsu attacks. It was not pretty. Now it gets to a certain situation where Code is essentially on the ground, growling, trying to recover. He understands that he's about to die. He understands that he needs to do something very quickly. He even said multiple times through the actual fight that, hey, Kawaki's probably going to kill me. I might actually die to Kawaki. Now Kawaki's rearing back, essentially doing his final move. The same thing that he did to Gar when he actually blew half of his body off. He essentially wants to do that to Code. Now, respectfully, I do have to kind of slander Kawaki right here because he was kind of waiting. It seemed like he was giving Code an opportunity, even though I do have to point out, the more that Kawaki actually does a load up for this attack, I'm pretty sure the stronger it gets. But at this given moment, it gave Code the green light to actually snatch Damon through one of his claw marks right as Kawaki's blast went off. Now, if you guys aren't necessarily completely familiar with Damon's ability, he reflects everything. Anything that you try to hit Damon with, you will get hit with. So obviously, Code uses Damon to actually block the attack, and then because of that, Kawaki gets hit dead on with his own attack. This right here was an absolute disrespectful move from Code himself. Even Ida was pissed off. But Kawaki now is like completely motionless, face down on the ground. Remind you guys, at this given moment, Naruto was essentially kind of consoling Boruto because of course Boruto was still dead at this given point. Shikamaru is trying to get Naruto off of Boruto and essentially try to get Naruto to aid Kawaki in actually defeating Code, because this right here is like a key moment. Code can be dead right here now, but they stopped what they were doing mainly because they heard the big explosion and they look back at Kawaki. Kawaki again is lifeless on the ground. He's not dead. Code even checks his pulse to make sure, mainly because it was like a big scare because Boruto was already dead. Like, you can't lose two of the vessels now. Like, what's going on here? But in this fight, as I said earlier, I was touching on the Naruto and Shikamaru thing. Naruto in this whole chapter did absolutely nothing. He did absolutely nothing. I think this right here is probably going to be one of my biggest criticisms of Naruto during the actual review and during my actual podcast that I'm going to be recording. Link is in my description down below. But he left Kawaki to fight against Code 1v1, and Kawaki ended up losing. That right there, in my personal opinion, was 100% on Naruto. Now, I gave you guys a heads up about the Momoshiki thing. We're going to get into that actually right now. As I said earlier, Momoshiki is now not able to take over Boruto's body. Boruto is now 100% Otsutsuki. But Boruto kind of recalled something that Momoshiki said to him. Momoshiki essentially told Boruto that those blue eyes will eventually take everything from you. Boruto thought that Momoshiki was talking about this specific situation right here because Boruto legitimately almost died. Boruto was kind of questioning if this is what Momoshiki was talking about. Momoshiki later on said no, that's not what he was talking about. He actually laughed, but he also says, even I can't see the reason for it, but you'll learn eventually why, because it will happen soon enough. You're a brat worth visiting after all. Now this right here essentially makes me think that Momoshiki is 100% being truthful. At the end of the chapter, we get a bit of dialogue between Ida and Code. Just to set this up a little bit, during the actual battle with Kawaki, or after the actual battle with Kawaki, Code was essentially saying that he's no match for Kawaki and that he needs to get his limiters lifted. Ida then says Amato is being sheltered and protected right in the center of the Konoha, but there aren't any claw marks inside the village. How are you planning to get closer to him? Code then replies, it won't be a problem. I've already made some preparations. So this right here is essentially detailing exactly what the next arc is probably going to be about. Now, not only that, we do have to talk about Shikamaru and Naruto's reaction to everything that did actually go down with Kawaki and with Boruto. Remind you guys, this conversation is happening while Boruto is still quote unquote dead. Now, Naruto was a very big question mark. A lot of people thought that he'd kind of react, possibly enrage, and probably even attack Kawaki. That did not happen. Naruto is actually kind of defending Kawaki versus Shikamaru in this chapter. Shikamaru is essentially asking, what should we do with Kawaki? Shikamaru didn't necessarily say anything definitive, but he was kind of leaning towards that, hey, we should probably exile Kawaki or something like that. So Naruto essentially asked him, what do you suppose we should do? Should we just like force him out of the village? Shikamaru then kind of backtracked and said, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying we should sit down and try to evaluate the situation. Now, it got to a certain point where Naruto was essentially standing behind Kawaki. Shikamaru got a little bit mad. Shikamaru kind of said some things like, he killed your son, and then Naruto got really pissed off. They also talked about the possible political ramifications behind all of this as well, which I think could also lead up into the next chapter. But honestly, this right here is very telling from Naruto's point of view. Now, specifically what Shikamaru said against Naruto's point of view, I think is going to be very interesting as well. A lot of people are going to have this stance. In fact, I even brought this up a couple of days ago. Shikamaru is essentially saying that Kawaki was extremely ruthless in doing what he did. Shikamaru isn't necessarily blaming Kawaki for doing what he did, but how he executed it was absolutely insane. As I said earlier, and of course as Shikamaru is saying right now, Kawaki had absolutely no emotions. Kawaki had no hesitations. Kawaki knew exactly what needed to be done, and he absolutely did. Now, it could be viewed in two separate ways. Kawaki can be viewed as a very emotionless guy that doesn't care about anything and only wants to complete his own goals, or we could view Kawaki as being a very stand-up guy. He himself knew exactly what the mission was, and he completed the mission to a T. We tell ninjas all the time, you shouldn't necessarily have emotions on your missions. This right here is replicated by damn near all Anbu Black Ops, except for Kakashi. He was like a different case scenario. But this right here is essentially what ninjas are. Shikamaru just kind of startled because Kawaki is like, he doesn't care. You see what I'm saying? But this chapter right here was absolutely insane. I'm really excited to see the official chapter actually release. The chapter is coming out in about 3 days. I believe it comes out the 20th. But let me know what you guys think about these spoilers in the comment section below. Boruto is officially free. It's been your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.